Welcome, everyone. This is the ESOP Guy, and we are on a journey to an ESOP. This podcast has been designed as a resource to help people think about and also understand better the employee stock ownership plan, the process itself, and whether or not it's a good thing for some companies that are thinking about this as a potential transition for their companies. So with that, we like to do a lot of different types of podcasts, and some of those are really just topical or things that we want to talk about to explore how the ESOP works. Other times we just want to get into experiences that people have had with ESOP. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to have a conversation about the ESOP experience itself. And we're going to get to interview a company called Symbiont Service. This is with the president of the company, Sandy King. And Sandy was the selling shareholder, and now she continues to work for the company, but it's 100% ESOP. So it's been a great privilege and an honor of mine to work with Sandy through the whole ESOP process from beginning to end. And we always learn. Everybody learns something along the way. I've learned a lot of different things from Sandy as we went through her ESOP process. But today, I think it'll be super helpful for people that are thinking about going through the ESOP process to listen to Sandy's story as we go through kind of what happened, how she came to the conclusion that the ESOP was a good fit for her and her business and her employees. And, with that, just kind of the excitement of having this whole thing over with as well, because it can be a bit daunting going through the whole step-by-step process. So Sandy, welcome to our podcast. We're so happy that you could join us this morning.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So as we start off, I just wanted to kind of start off talking a little bit about your background. I know that your business itself and just kind of the history of it was kind of very intriguing when we first started going through the whole process. So give us a little bit of your background as we kind of discover what you've done and how you've gone through it all.
Okay. So originally my parents started the business in the early 70s. It was a conventional standard HVAC contracting type company. And in the 80s, early 80s, my father designed a Symbiont. That's our main niche product called Symbiont. It's a geothermal pool heating product that it's kind of crazy. My dad was kind of ahead of his time. He always was thinking of his employees, even back then, because back then it wasn't so busy year round with the HVAC business. It was more just summer. So he wanted to keep his guys working year round, all his employees year round. And he also was an inventor type person. So he created this Symbiont. It was a pool heating system that was great for the winter to sell to our customers. And then the employees had the AC business in the summer. So it was, he was thinking of symbiotic relationships way back then. And then I graduated in '84 from college. He got me in the business kind of quickly. I had a business on the East Coast called Hydrothermal Systems, and I was selling the Symbiont geothermal pool heater that my father designed, and he was manufacturing back then. He stopped manufacturing in the 90s. But I came to the business on my own doing it on the East Coast, but then they wanted me to come back and to the family business. So in '96, I came back to the family business, moved from the East Coast back to the West Coast of Florida and worked with the family until 2007. And then I became the sole owner at that time. My brother retired. My parents had retired before him. And so then I was just running the company at that time. So we became a very energy efficient, we're still an HVAC contracting company, air conditioning and heating, but we specialize in geothermal and then the higher efficiency conventional air conditioning systems. So it's been quite a journey. Our company's been growing. In 2007, when I took over, the recession hit, as probably everyone remembers, in 2008. And so we've had some bumps in the road along the way, but it's been quite the journey.
Yeah, perfect time to take over a business, right?
I know. Yeah.
Session. So one thing that I want to make sure everybody knows, we're in Florida. Both Sandy and I work in Florida. So her business itself does a lot of air conditioning and different things. So Florida, that's a big business. The Symbiont system is very unique, right? So before we get too deep into the conversation, your Symbiont system isn't kind of like, that's not something every company can sell, right? Is that
I mean, they can if they want to go through all the learning curve that we went through, but it's a unique product. It's a geothermal pool heater, and not that many people sell it. It's manufactured now by AquaCal in St. Petersburg, and we have the distribution rights for the state of Florida, and we're a warranty station, and we really created this niche that's very unique to our company. And honestly, I believe that product is what got us through the recession in 2008, because it was so unique. So we weren't just any regular company. So we had a niche market that was, you know, it's an amazing product. And we do a lot of commercial pools, a lot of municipalities, and we are busy year round now.
Yeah. And so one thing, the reason I was bringing that up too, is because when you think about your options, as far as you were at that point when we first started talking, like considering the options that you had, you could have sold the company to a strategic buyer, but you chose to go with the ESOP. Can we talk about that a little bit in terms of what made you decide to go towards the ESOP?
Sure. Well, the short answer is the employees. At the end of the day, your company, and you can have all the assets you want that are tangible assets, but at the end of the day, if you don't have good, solid employees, your company doesn't have the value that I think. That's just my opinion as a business owner. I've always valued the employees and always felt like without them, obviously, what would we have? So, but even before that, so I have a lot of family, but none of them wanted to take over the business. So that was one option for my success. I needed a succession plan, basically. So the succession plan, no family members. So then I hired a business broker, and I was even under, I even had a letter of intent from a buyer. But then as we started digging into the specifics, and I started realizing how it was what all the conditions were of the transaction, I wasn't feeling comfortable with the idea of selling to this third party stranger. I was going to have to become an employee after 37 years. I was going to have to become an employee of a complete stranger, because there was going to be this transition period. And part of the condition was the growth of the company would be the rest of my payout. But the broker, the fees for the broker, they wanted a piece of everything: my employment agreement, the commission on the sale. They wanted a commission on the lease on the building that we rent, and that lease was already in place. And so they just felt greedy, honestly, and the numbers were climbing. And at the end of the day, what was left on paper, because they weren't paying me in full, but I had to pay all the fees out in full at the closing, I wasn't walking away very much money, and no longer a business owner. So it was really left a bad taste in my mouth. So I had to wait 3 years, because of the contract that I had with this broker, before I could decide my next option for a succession plan. And it's the best thing that could have happened to me, because the 3 years helped me to grow the business, increase revenue, increase sales, increase profit. You know, it just, all these things, I really focused on the business for the 3 years and tried to build it up. And that really, it was actually a blessing in disguise at the time. But I think the costs of selling to a perfect stranger that was gonna, who knew if they'd maintain the legacy of the company, who knew if they'd have the philosophy of symbiotic relationships and taking care of the employees and the customers at the level that our core values are at Symbiont. It just wasn't the right move for me. So I put the brakes on it, and 3 years went by before I did anything else.
Wow. And, you know, I never actually knew that. I was, you know, my notes here. And it's not the first time I've heard this, where somebody goes through what I would call is like a dead end. Like they go through this whole process, but I think it really actually helps you, because, you know, at least going through that, you know, that what that option looked like for some people. They never do that, and they're always like thinking, hey, what if we would have gone this different route? So I think that's a very interesting part of your story. And one of the things that you didn't say is that in the 3 years, you also were able to acquire a company, because when we put everything together for your ESOP, we were able to kind of look at I think it was the year after, right? You did the acquisition. And so that really helped your numbers.
Yeah, it was actually within the same year, I think. I think it was because it was in March of 2021. And by the end of the year, it had shown what an increase in value it did for the company. So it happened it was very fast. was a small local HVAC company. The real motivation for buying the company was, I don't know if anybody knows about the trade issues in Florida, but finding good technicians to work is almost, you have to steal them from somebody else, basically. Yep. So we bought this company. We got customers out of it, but we got 8 very good technicians, service technicians. We love them. They're part of the Symbiont work family now. It took, there was a transition, but it was great to bring them on, and they're great technicians, and it did increase the value of Symbiont by buying them. So
yeah, it definitely did. And so people ask me that all the time. Hey, we're in the middle of an acquisition, or we think we'll do one during the ESOP, and I always come back to, just thinking about your story, but other clients too. That's not a problem. It's just a matter of how you structure it. In your case, it was structured, where you were able to pay for it, right at the front end. So it wasn't part of your forecasted cash flow that was coming out. So it actually did bump your numbers up in the forecast, which we got credit for in the valuation, which was all very good. So
yeah, it was the biggest return on investment of anything I've ever done. So except the sale of Symbiont. Yeah.
It was a brilliant business move. Yeah. So going into the ESOP a little bit, you kind of talked about the employees and just how much it really kind of what resonated when you were talking about everything. It was like, it really meant more, what meant a lot to you is what it looked like for your employees going forward. And just that the business itself, the way you guys, the philosophy, how you guys work with your clients. Would you say those are the main drivers of why you chose the ESOP?
Definitely the employees. So it just so happens AquaCal that manufactures our pool heaters, they're also an ESOP, and of course, public. So I talked to the VP of AquaCal and many times about the ESOP approach, and he gave me the pros and cons along the way, and he's told me that their employees are finally starting to get it, the benefit of it, and what a good move it was. So I run my company on EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating Systems.
A lot of people know it.
Okay, yeah, so we have a leadership team, and not to talk about age, but my leadership team isn't getting any younger, right? And I was afraid that a buyer would maybe not take care of them properly either. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to make sure that my leadership team was properly taken care of, and give the younger employees something to, take value in. So we try to act like owners. We share profits based on owners. This was before the ESOP. And we have ownership thinking kind of philosophy. And so I really wanted to get them to understand their owners too. And doing the ESOP, I think, was that final piece that really got them to get it. I think. I mean, it's not, we've only been in ESOP a year and a half now, and it's going to take time.
It takes time, and normally people say it's a couple of years. They got to keep seeing the participant statements and yes, see the change in their shares and the change in the value. So, but yeah, you're on the right track. I will plug EOS for a second. I don't work for them, but I will tell you that a lot of companies that do EOS are really good candidates for ESOPs. And like with Sandy's company, the nice thing about EOS with Gino Wickham's traction book is that there's business processes that we can really discover and present well to a trustee and then their valuation firm. And it's just better. It's a good structure for a company because you can see that it's not up to just Sandy or just her key people. It's actually the business itself has processes that they run through. They keep measures of numbers. And so just a quick sidebar, I think it's just, those kind of platforms are great for companies to work through the ESOP process.
I agree. And we've been running on EOS and we still are, since I think 2012, I think we started. And it has scorecards and the whole systems. I'm all about systematizing things. I don't want the Symbiont name to be only be connected to me, like the strength of the company. I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be about the whole company. And so I'd like to see the legacy of Symbiont Service go on beyond me, to have my grandchildren know that the company's still here and well past my years, and it still be, thriving. So I think EOS does help us do that. And then the ESOP, like I said, was the final piece to really drive it home that, hey, you guys, you're actually owners now. It's not just me. We're all owners together now. So
what matters, that's for sure. Going into like just your broker story was really fascinating. Going into the process of selecting and doing the ESOP must have been a challenge for you too. So if you go back in time a little bit, talk through that a little bit, your process, your steps of going into the ESOP.
Okay. So my daughter's an attorney and her husband's an attorney, and she has a friend, David Heedy from Shoemaker, and she put me in touch with him. He's a corporate attorney, and he was doing some stuff for me, and I was talking things over with him. He actually did the transaction for buying that company in the AC company back in March 2021. And so he put me in touch with John Burgess, who also works at Shoemaker, who specializes in ESOPs. And so I started talking to him, and he recommended two people, and Phil, you were one of them. And I interviewed them both. And honestly, the other company brought in like two other people, and I felt like it was very industrial. It just didn't feel, this is my baby, right? Symbiont Service is my baby practically. And I didn't want this, like all these hands, all these people. It just kind of reminded me of the merger company, the brokerage company. So you made me comfortable. I liked your approach. You were very honest. You said, we got to start with evaluation. We have to figure out the value of your company. And if it's not in the numbers that you want, keep working, don't try and sell right now. That's and true. So it was true. And then you had this formula approach, which to me wasn't very systematized, which I like. And you had a very clear agreement and price, and all those things enticed me to go with you. You had a written process for how it was going to happen, which I think is extremely helpful. And so obviously I went with you, as you know. And so it just made sense to go with you and go through the steps. So there was a lot to it. Man, was I educated and fast.
Yeah, it is a lot. And I think one of the things about whether it's my process or somebody else's, I think you have to prove, the thing I would say about that is you have to prove out the ESOP, not necessarily kind of starting with the conclusion, hey, you're going to be an ESOP company, because I don't think anybody can say that. I mean, it's not just about the valuation. It's about a lot of the different parts and pieces that have to be discovered as you go through it. So when we start going through that, it may be, hey, we're in a different place by the time we get to the end. But in your case, I think it worked out good. And there was enough information each time that we worked together to make sure that it was proving out and it was going in the right direction. So, so going into the actual, as far as what you do, I think there are a lot of questions from people about, the selling shareholder with your succession plan, and then the actual, potential exit as you start thinking about, you're not just selling your stock. In an ESOP, you're kind of transitioning into a different role. I mean, you go from owner to, employee, and kind of wear a lot of hats in that whole process. When you go back and forth through, you're representing the company, and I know like this for you, Sandy, is very, very true. You're going to do everything possible to make sure that the company is in a good position. But at the same time, you're also selling your stock to the company, right? And so the challenge is you got to wear the two hats, which is, hey, I'm selling my stock back to the company. And I want to, as a selling shareholder, I want to get the best possible deal. But the other side of it is I want to run the company really well too. And I want to make sure as the company overpays or doesn't, So talk about that a little bit in terms of the difficulty or the complexity of being in both of those roles.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because the stage that was the most anxiety filled for me was the negotiation stage that you handled with the trustee. And I did have anxiety about oh my gosh, I want to go out with a bang and get a really good price to impress my family or to make sure I have what I need, because I'm only 60 and I'm very healthy. And so, knock on wood, I hope to live a long, healthy life, more beyond even Symbiont. And I wanted a good price. And I wanted it to be fair. Your formulas and your approach is very matter of fact and clear, and it was helpful to me. But you did still negotiate at a level that was like, oh, that's too much. Oh, that's, like the interest for the payments and different things that you did. It was like, I had to keep switching hats. And you were like, this is the fun part. Relax. Because we went back and forth with the trustee, and I was like, fun, I'm losing my mind here. And it extended over weekends. And like, it wasn't just, here's the offer, the trustee approves it, done. It was a back and forth of, I think, 3 times. And you said that's part of the drill. And I was just like anxiety filled. And but at the end of the day, I felt like you negotiated on my behalf in a very great way. That was one of my biggest impressions or excitements about it, was how well you negotiated on my behalf, and you were able to switch hats whenever you needed to make it flow. So you're very skilled at that. And so anyway, it was a process. It was intense.
Yeah, and I think after hindsight's everything, right? So and I appreciate all the good comments, but when you get down to it, your passion for your company and your compassion for your people, you're going to do the right thing, and I think when you get down to that issue, as far as, well, you got to be the president of the company and you also are the selling shareholder, a good advisor will help you kind of work through both sides, because you want both to win. You want the company to win and you want the selling shareholder to win. Mm-hmm. And I think what I would say about that is, as long as you have the options in front of you, you can always choose to do, what you think is right at the end of the day. And if you don't have those options, then it's like, okay, the company won and you lost. That's not going to be a good situation, because now you are, like, as you expressed to me earlier, you're not, maybe paying yourself what you could with the deal that you got. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we had to do bank financing for part of it. And so I got a lump sum initially with the bank. Small, like, I think it was like 1/3 maybe of it, of the process, but even might have been a little less than that. And we have to pay them back first before I'm allowed to get principal payments for what the company owes me, because I also had equity or retained earnings in there that they owe me. And so they're supposed to pay me interest and for the principal, but I haven't always taken the interest payments, just because I want to make sure there's cash flow, and I don't want to. I have a new CEO, technically, not CEO, but my director of finance. He's new to the company, and I don't want to stress him. I know it's going to be fine. Our cash flow is good, but I want him to be very comfortable with it all. And so I'm not taking the payments consistently. I've taken some, but not consistently. And just because I feel like I want to make sure there's plenty of cash for everything that we're trying to do. Our payroll's high. We're at 66 employees. So I just want to make sure that everything's flowing right. So you negotiated a very good interest rate for me. At the time, it seemed really high. And now with the interest rates, it's spot on. So anyway, it's
I think that's, you have the choice. You can choose however you want to do it, but at the end of the day, at least you have the choice. So going from like the whole timeline, if you said beginning of the transaction to the end of the transaction, what did you find? I think you've already said the most beneficial was like the negotiation part of it. Is that true? As far as
definitely. And the value that you got from me, and based on what I thought it was going to be back when I was trying to sell it through to a different way.
That's actually an interesting point too, because you're saying that the value you got from the ESOP was better than you thought you were going to get with the strategic buyer.
Absolutely. Because there were so many stipulations with the strategic buyer that there were so many conditions, and I wasn't comfortable with all those unknowns. And you were very good at the very beginning at coaching me of you kept saying, continue to grow your company, keep running it like you're trying to hit it out of the park. And we did, and we continued to grow. And even through COVID, that was a tough time, but we got through all that. And we did continue to grow and increase profits. And I really was paying attention to the details of the company. Not that I'm not now, but I was even ultra focused. And but you were kind of coaching me. You're like, hey, because the other surprise is the actual amount you sell for isn't determined until the very final books are closed out for the year that you sold it. And so, because I thought there was a certain number it was going to be, but then you had to finish the books for the year. And so every little detail mattered right up until the finish. And even after, because you had to finish the books, right? So that was part of it too.
Yeah, because you were on, so kind of to speak that just a second. So you're basically looking at every month your financial performance in comparison to what we forecasted for the discounted cash flow. So if you're continually, either on track or exceeding that to get to your forecast, then that's a really good thing. If you're going and it's the opposite and things are not as good, then it could be a negative thing. So in your case, things were really working towards, actually we're going to exceed the goal.
And you showed me that, and like, it could be less, you got to keep the company rolling. And we did exceed expectations. And it was, there was no relaxing through the whole process.
Yeah, there was no relaxing. Keep doing. So then the other side of that coin is, what was the most difficult or disappointing part of the whole process?
I think in hindsight, I might have not done bank financing, because there was a lot of, I don't like to waste money. They sometimes call me the bean counter at Symbiont, and I don't like to waste money. And I had a perfectly good attorney that was very fair with what he was charging. And then the bank's attorney was like 3 times what seemed fair. And it was, and they were redoing work that my attorney had already done. And it was wasteful money. And so the bank fees were ridiculous through the bank. And I almost wanted to say, forget it. We're not going to do the deal. And at one point I said that to you. So.
Yeah, you did say that. I was like, oh, and then you were like, all right, we'll talk through it. And, business mind or business decision, as opposed to like, this is not feeling good. And and I think the good thing to understand about that, and I think it's good that you bring it up, is because when you do select the bank, you need to really evaluate the best possible scenario with what bank that a company is going to choose. Because when you get that deep into it, there's really no turning back unless you decide, hey, I'm not going to do this. I'll just do seller financing.
And I considered that. And I think we pushed with this bank because we did get turned down by a few banks, but also we were trying to close the deal by the end of 2021.
That's right. Yeah. And so
that was hard. That was a push.
It was hard, and it made, just to be completely, like, from my perspective, the bank made the closing really difficult. And it was difficult, and it was solely the bank and their the way that they've structured their closing. It was just like, they could have made it so much more simple. And I've seen so many other ESOP deals, not just before that, but after that are like a breeze, much bigger than yours, that the bank was like, yeah, that's fine, boom, boom. And you move through it so easily. So that, I will say that definitely was partly because we chose a larger bank. They have one process for every ESOP deal, whether it's $100 million sale or, a much smaller one. And I just think do your due diligence very early on in the process to make sure. But I think that's a good takeaway for people as they start thinking about, how they're structuring their financing, and just making sure that that's, I would say ask questions, to the bank about their legal counsel and how they're going to go through this, and definitely ask about what the costs are going to be way before you accept the term sheet or the commitment letter.
Right. Well, believe me, I asked. I didn't find out about the lawyer's fees until deep into the process.
Well, I think in this case, they misrepresented the fees as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did. They knew I was going to cancel. They did make an offer at the end to kind of spread the cost. So in the end, there's no hard feelings. It just, you said, what was my big surprise? That was my big surprise.
That was your big surprise. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's always something to learn. And that's something I learned too during that
Mhm.
process.
Yeah.
About and that's why we're doing this, is to share that. It's not to be any, negative about anybody, but it is
Yeah.
truth to this, that, when you get into it, you just have to be careful.
Yeah.
So the next question really is about cost too, in general. I mean, because I can tell you, and I'm so surprised at the varied cost for ESOPs all over the country. And it really does. It's really intriguing anyways, the whole concept. And that's just one of the questions everybody's going to ask me when I talk to a company about an ESOP. Hey, how much is it cost? I mean, why wouldn't you ask that question? And so from your perspective, how would you address that question if somebody were to ask you about the costs?
Well, the initial costs are significantly less than the commission for a broker to sell your business.
Yeah.
And so that was an advantage, in my opinion. But the thing that people need to be aware of is there's ongoing costs for running your company as an ESOP, because you got to pay the trustee every year. You got to pay the trustee's valuation company that's independent every year. You have to pay a third-party administrator to do all the participant certificates and the distributions and all those things. They're very important. You have to have them. You have to pay an independent board member. So there's fees after the fact that the insurance was kind of heavy, and you have to do that every year. Now, it's still less, I believe, than the money I would have drawn to pay my taxes, for example, because we're an S corp. So I still think it's less than that. I'm pretty certain it is significantly less. So there's not that drain would have been me taking the money to pay my taxes versus paying these fees. So, and the third party administrator you need, and the trustee is helpful. I do like my trustee, and you helped me find the trustee, of course. And so there's those costs that people need to be aware of, because it's not over once you close. There's continuing ongoing costs as a business. But so then there's the fee with you, the fee with the attorney, hiring the trustee hiring their valuation company. I had a surprising cost with my accountant, because I think I paid him to be educated, because he charged me by the time. And he quoted me one fee, and then it went way over, and he wasn't bending on his fee. So it cost me, more to pay him to do the end of the year stuff that had to be done. And he's very reasonable, but for my monthly fees, and I adore my accountant. So it's not like that, but it just ended up being more than we had anticipated. Sure. But some of that's just business, those are business costs that you're going to have.
Doing business, cost of the transaction. And I think it's good to compare it to like a normal deal where you sell your business, and the business broker, is going to be a commission-based type of deal. And so one thing that I will say about costs for ESOPs is that the first thing is that it matters who your advisor is, because most advisors for ESOP transactions are going to operate like a business broker. They're not going to operate the way we do it. The way we do it is just advisory fee based on the deal, and maybe the deal's more complex or less complex. The way they do it is they're going to take a success fee. They're going to take a fee off the financing. So that's even though that's not what you experience, that's the norm. And so I think there are other opportunities or advisors like me out there, but it's definitely my point is ask the question there, because out of those fees, the trustee's fee, the valuation fee, the attorney's fees are going to be normally about the same in general. Although in some geographies like Chicago, different parts of the country, they're going to be a lot more. But so definitely be thinking about when you're into this question about cost, asking the question of who's doing what's the role that they're playing, and then what are they going to charge for that role. And sometimes people will do fixed fees, and other times they won't, so it's just or they'll have a fixed fee. And if things get really complicated, then they may add more to it. So I think that's a good point transactionally. But what Sandy said too is a very good point. What are your other advisors, looking at as well? If you have your CPA working on it, really asking questions proactively before you get too deep into this is probably the best advice we can give you.
Yeah. I mean, you had us go through the process of interviewing several trustees. We didn't interview attorneys because John Burgess had brought me to you, and he's local here, and I felt really comfortable with him from the get-go, like just him explaining ESOPs and everything, and he's great. I highly recommend him. But there was quite a range of trustee prices. Remember that? And
really, yeah,
it was kind of shocking, and I hate to say that I went with the lowest price because I'm not always like that, but I actually he was a lower price, but I liked him better anyway.
Yeah.
So
his approach was good. And some of it's price when you get to the trustee, but and some of it's a combination of price and service and what people perceive in the personalities of those people. And it's really hard to hire people that you're going to want to have, with you for the long term. Right. And so nice thing about the process of the trustee is you can hire them and then you don't have to go with them. So you can always bring somebody else in as trustee, so you're not bound to that, but it always helps to have the same trustee because they know everything because they've been through
it. Yeah. It's funny though, because he represented the company during the negotiations. And now that it is an ESOP, he's more willing to work with me, directly and help me to make the company successful because, but he still represents the people. On our June 25th presentation to the employees, he came and I was doing the PowerPoint presentation or planning to, and he said, I do these all the time. I think I should do it. And he stepped right in and did the whole presentation off of my slide presentation. And it was interesting, but he did great. And it was a relief for me. So.
Yeah. So that segues into like the people itself. So, and you said already kind of they're starting to get it. What are the issues related to getting your people up to speed on ESOPs? Because I think that's a big question that people always ask me.
We're still working on it. So my favorite answer now is when somebody asks me something, I look at them and say, you're an owner too. What would you do? So I don't give them the answers anymore. I try not to. It's hard for me because,
almost like raising kids. You're like, hey, just now it's your thing. What are you going to do? You're an adult, so you have to make some decisions that.
Yeah, it's like, what do you think the right answer is? So, and I'm constantly saying that, this is your company too now. Treat it like your own because it is your own. And so that I'm trying to drill that in, and I think it's sinking in. For example, when the hurricane hit us, which it was pretty intense, Hurricane Ian, just in September 28th, we'll never forget, it did some good damage to us at Symbiont. And the day after the storm, even though my employees had damage to their own homes, they came in droves to the office. We didn't have power. We didn't have internet. They came and they started digging in and helping to clean up and move things around. And everybody was genuinely concerned. And they were just right there. I really felt like they owned they were owners at that point. That was a real true testament to them caring. I was very proud of my employees for that.
That's cool. That is pretty cool. Yeah. To actually see that, and I think you guys, just to give you credit, like you guys had a great culture before we started, right? And the ESOP has only enhanced that culture. And so
I think it's the final piece.
Yeah, the final piece.
Yeah.
So as so as a selling shareholder that sold 100%, and I one thing about that is like people are like, well, I'm selling 100%. Now what's my role in the company? What and the combination of like the planning and everything starts to come together with what you've done. What is your role now in the company, and what do you want it to be? Because you are in the middle of this succession plan.
Mm-hmm. Well, I used to be the director of sales and marketing, and I turned that over to Dave Ballard, who's on the leadership team. And my director of finance actually left the company before we closed the deal on the ESOP. And that was hard because he had been with the company over 7 years, and he was very helpful to me. He was like my right-hand man, and it was hard to lose him. But I found a replacement, and he's doing a great job, and he's being groomed to do director of finance. Right now he's just VP of assets, but he's going to be the director of finance. And I am working with him in the kind of wearing the hat temporarily for director of finance, but he's kind of doing it himself. He doesn't even realize how much of it he's doing himself. And I have someone that I'm grooming that's on the leadership team, my installation manager, Mike Jakes. I'm grooming him to become the president of the company.
Awesome.
And that's going to take some time, but because he's so busy in this position he has, but he's great. He's got all the right philosophies of the company, and he's here to stay. He's actually the license holder for the electrical now. I'm the license holder for the air conditioning, so we haven't worked out who's going to get that license for the state. You know, you have to have a contractor's license. And so I still have the license for air conditioning, but he's going to get the pool license, and he's starting to work towards getting the different licenses to qualify the company and become the president. So it's a process that I'm trying to work through and working towards. I happen to live in Sarasota now, which is an hour drive on a good day. So I've been working from home 4 days a week, and it's kind of forcing my team to do without me and do well without me. I go in on Thursdays for our leadership team meetings, we call them the L10 meetings, and all the different meetings that I need to have that I feel like face-to-face is even better than Zoom. But I still do a lot of Zoom meetings with them during the week. And so it's a transition that's evolving. I think I'm answering your question.
You're absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's a process that's going to take time, and I don't want to abandon them. I have an employment agreement for 4 years, with an option to renew annually after that. I hope to renew one more time, maybe, to get to 65, and then I'll retire officially. But you know, we'll see. We'll see how it evolves.
Yeah, and that's one thing I love about the ESOP is that you're not forced too quickly to do anything, and the way you're doing it is really a good example for people. Only because you know you have to take some time to make sure you got the right people in the right positions. And like you said with Mike, you know, he's going to be the president, and so you're grooming him for that role. You're grooming the guy for the director of finance position. You know, and you could see the potential for these people, but there's one thing about like walking away too soon, right? And it could be a problem for everybody, because, you know, if you do that, if you just unplug, then it's like the company's going to have problems, and then you're going to have problems as well, because you're all connected to it.
Yeah, they might not be able to make the payments. It's funny that you say that. I just want to mention one other thing. I had two key employees. I think I just mentioned them, but that were considering buying me out.
Oh, that's right.
Looked into it. So that was one of the others. That was one other step, was sell to an employee, that we were going to look into them getting their own loans and buying me out. But the one condition, if they got an SBA loan, was I literally could not stay in the company. If they had to be an official buyout. And so I would have to leave much quicker, and I wasn't quite ready for that. And then it put a lot of burden on those two to come up with all that cash and have this debt that they were going to have to take on. And at the end of the day, when we did all the math and we talked it over and we had lots of meetings, we agreed that the ESOP would be best for them too. And so, because we did, I forgot that we had considered that for a little while, and because I offered it to them, did you want to buy me out? And I gave them my number, and it was all, you know, so yeah.
And that's why when I was talking about, like, we prove out the ESOP, sometimes with what you're talking about, this was the management buyout portion of our process, where we were like, hey, let's look at that in combination, you know, or side by side with the ESOP in terms of not just, you know, your situation, but their situation. Like, well, this is how much cash you'll have left over because you're paying all this debt back. And you're going to be paying on a management buyout, you're going to be paying that after tax. So they have less money in the whole pool of things. But in your situation, the whole situation, because you're tax exempt as an S corporation, which is the big celebration point really for all of us when we think about an S corporation ESOP, is we no longer send all that money to the IRS and not to be too political, but it's like, this is such a great opportunity for the company to take that money that was going to taxes and bring it back into the equation so that the people can have, the employees can have a better opportunity to create wealth, when
Absolutely.
you get that.
And that was part of the math too. And I just one more plug for you. Well, we were trying to decide all of this. You had to have the missing piece of the valuation of the company, because I threw out a gut price to them. And I said, but listen, we have to hire a company to find the true value of the company that's fair so that everyone is comfortable with the number. And then that's where you did the valuation. And even if I hadn't done ESOP, your valuation, the money spent on having you do that was not wasted, because like you said, if it's not right timing to sell now, you just have this formula, you can plug in the new numbers and you still get a new valuation down the road. Also, to sell to a third party or to my employees, I knew what number was fair, that I could walk away at the end of the day, not guessing if my price was right.
Yeah,
that's so that valuation was key.
Yeah, that's a good point, because a lot of people think, oh, my value is X multiple of EBITDA, and they don't even know why they're saying that. They just have this.
They heard it.
Yeah, they've heard it from somebody. So. So final question as we think about it and this is a big question too that I get from people from a control perspective. And what I mean by that is, do I have the control of the company where I was doing this and now I'm not doing this because the trustee's telling me what to do or the board is telling me what to do? How would you say that any real changes have happened from that perspective in terms of what you were doing before, from running the company to now?
So full transparency, we haven't had a board meeting yet.
Okay.
With Ian, we were planning it. The hurricane really put a damper on us. And we're not even doing fourth quarter rocks. Don't tell my EOS person. Nope. But we're buried with what's going on from the hurricane. And so people can barely keep their head above water. So honestly, no one's telling me what to do yet. And I think they're a little bit like not comfortable telling me what to do. Nobody's saying, hey, you need to do this, or like, I'll give you a silly example. I needed tires, and I love the company that does all our fleet management. And so I needed new tires for my personal vehicle. And my director of finance didn't realize that I had to pay for that. The Symbiont couldn't pay for my tires. And so, and it was significant. It was $1,200. So this was just the other day. I'm like, no, I have to pay for that. I'm just driving to work like any other employee. If I use my car for business, okay, but I'm driving to work like any other employee. I got to pay for my own tires. And so I'm almost the one that's reminding them and keeping it honest and keeping it real from what the old way used to be. So. Yeah.
Well, that's who you are. You're going to do the right thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's going to come, but I think that one of the main things that people get caught up with is, I'm going to sell my company to an ESOP, and now I'm going to have all these people, in my business. And that's just not the way it works. It
hasn't happened that way. And I welcome it when they take over more. Like, I'm going to welcome that. And I'm ready for that whenever that happens. And I want to walk the talk, and I'm an employee like they are. And I want them to know that I'm being as fair as I possibly can be.
Yeah, that's great. Well, wonderful. We're basically out of time, but this has been an awesome, like I said, the ESOP experience from beginning to end. I'm so thankful that you would take the time to do that, to help other people.
Absolutely.
To explore this as an option. And so I thank you for that. And I guess the last thing to say is, in any final words about, the ESOP adventure that you've been on, or anything that you would say is, this is my final comment to the whole thing.
I think it's totally worth it. I think it's the future of businesses, is to continue to give back to your employees, and you get something out of it too. So it's still a symbiotic exchange. I benefited from it, obviously, and will continue to benefit from it. And it set me up for my future, but yet my company will live on as Symbiont Service, and the employees own it. And I'm excited to see how it grows and continues to evolve, instead of just completely changing by some stranger.
Yeah, that's great.
So, yeah.
And thank you for your time today, and we really appreciate it.
Welcome.
So for everybody else, thank you so much for listening today, and we'll see you on our next step on this journey to an ESOP.